All right, we're going to be playing Tezuka for the weekly open round 2. Say best of luck in the chat, which you can't see, so it's important for me to announce it so you don't think I'm a terrible sport. Um, all right, so we're level 6. Important to remember no plus wall. We're going to be saying that over and over again because it's pretty important to keep in mind. Um, I played pretty well the first round. I'm pretty happy with it. I played very well. It actually reminded me of a game I played against Tezuka where I played what I was confident was the best move, and I was confident it was at least a tie, but I expected it to be a tie and hadn't really calculated. And at some point, Tezuka sent a message, I guess I don't have a save here. And I was like, oh, wait, really? And it turned out he was correct, and I, assuming it had been a tie, was deeply incorrect. And a similar thing happened with Delhi, where my calculation wasn't mega precise, but I did make the best move. And I'm okay with that trade off. So let's check his hand. I notice a left weakness, very similar to what Delhi had against me. Um, so a 6 and then some 4s. So a serious left problem. Going up, it looks like some 8s. Yeah, I have nothing big going down. All right, so I don't want my downs to face his ups. What about his downs? He has an 8 and a 7. I have a little to combat that, but that looks fairly balanced. Yeah, fairly balanced. Like I have 87531 up, and he has 87532 facing down. Seems very balanced there. To the right, he has 2 8s, a 6, and 2 5s. Yeah, I'm not going to be able to fight him too well there, though I have 2 8s to the left, so there might be some safety to be found. And, yeah, his left, my 6, 7, and 8 to the right are going to be very powerful cards. So my top 3 cards are probably going to be the more useful cards in my hand. Though the 8561 having an 8 up is pretty useful. Now, can he play something like 7834 in 7? Worth checking, because that is safe to my hand. Can we set up against it? Well, 1848 would need a 3 to the left to be set up in 4. Don't have that. 3766 would need a 6 to the left. Don't have that. 7637 would need a 4 to the left. Don't have that. 8561 would need an 8 to the left. I do have that. So 1848 and 5, but that doesn't set up 8. And 5538 would need a 5 to the left. Okay, so I have no setups against it, and it is safe to my hand. Not the ideal start, but perhaps not the end of the world. One thing I notice is if he goes 7834 and 7, maybe I could get away with 7637 in 8. Not sure I could, but if he goes for something like 8571 and 9, I have 1848 and 5, locking in my card in 8 and setting up threats in both 4 and 6, and I should be in pretty decent shape there. Or I have a decent chance to be. Maybe it still loses, but it's a decent chance to hold. And if he goes in 5 after I go in 8, he did use his main down power, and maybe I can set up against the 6583. Can I? Maybe not. Maybe not. That looks very unpleasant. Okay, so 7637 and 8, probably not the best idea. But I do like that 8571, him grabbing safety, or 8654 and 9, I don't think works for him. But I think he could go 5, and Tezuka likes to go 5. If there's a good move in 5, Tezuka's much more likely to find it than I am. And he could also probably just go 4, right? Like, yeah. So this is definitely going to be dangerous. On the other hand, he does the Delial thing. Not that Delial would necessarily do it here, but that card's going to be great whenever I play it, so I'm in no rush. Why would I play it now? I can play it later. It's going to dominate whenever I do. Let's save that for higher impact later. He has pretty ample recaptures here, so I don't think there's too much point in checking whether I can capture and force action. I would like the game leftward bound. We know this. Specifically, anything with a 6 or higher is tricky. He gave up some up power, but he has ample up power. We're not going to be able to take advantage of that. We should have pretty good captures on his card, right? I shouldn't be too worried about needing to set up against it. 7-6-3-7 and 7 strikes me as the kind of obvious thing to do. And I think the question is, do I have a good response to 6-5-8-3 and 4? And if I do, I should be happy with this move, and if I don't, I cannot play it. I'm not sure. I'm suspecting I don't have a response I'm happy with there. But just double checking. Wish I could play certain cards twice. Alright, that doesn't look great. Adjacent corners tend to be pretty good against weak corner starters. Maybe I should be looking there. Right, something like 3-7-6-6 in 1, maybe. My nose is running. But we'll deal with that once I make my move. I don't have tissues right here. I wish 3-7-6-6 and 1 set up against 7-8-3-4 and 7, but that's not his main reply anyway, so probably not too important. And I wish 3-7-6-6 and 1 was safe facing down, but probably nothing we can do about that. Yeah, it looks like a reasonable move. We don't get killed by 8-5-7-1-4. I don't think we're killed by 2. I think we have decent replies to that. Yeah, let's go 1, and I'm gonna go grab a tissue. Alright, may as well mute while I'm up. Nah, you can hear the sound of my door opening. Lucky day for you. Alright, I had a couple things I wanted to talk about. One was Tezuka is currently in the finals of Ultimecia. One of his opponents will be Seto, and one is undetermined. Good luck to Tezuka, unless DJ is one of the other finalists, in which case, good luck to Tezuka and DJ. Go Avalanche. Though I will also be quite happy for Seto if he wins. I think there's I got one, Dalial got one, Seto getting one in the return would be rather nice, I think. But Tezuka getting 2 in the return, that would be pretty cool as well. What else is going on? The other thing, I was having a conversation, one with Tezuka. I was thinking about how to get into this. I didn't really think about how I wanted to talk about this. And now I've kind of forgotten what I wanted to talk about. I was thinking about calculation, and I was thinking about how we improve at things. And one thing is, like, I am a somewhat lazy calculator, right? Like, I do it when I think I have to, and I try to get away without doing it when I don't think I have to. But like 3 move calculations are fun, or like 2 move calculations, sure. I run through all the possibilities, it's quick, it's easy, it feels good. And when it feels good, you're happy to do a bunch of it, right? That's not tiring, that's not exhausting, that's not pushing against your limits. And I think like a lot of what makes the difference between like long-term great players and players who have like a hot streak at some point but can't really maintain it is the long-term players are just significantly better calculators. And the great calculators will always be really strong. But the people with great kind of instincts or feel for the game, as soon as that feel wavers a little, they're going to drop off. And so, like, if there was kind of 2 halves to the game, and I think there's more than that, but if there were 2 halves to the game and one was kind of like understanding and sense and intuition, and the other was calculation and various things you'd spin off of that, calculation is going to correlate better with how good someone is. Calculation's just really, really important in triple triad. Um, they're both important, but I do think calculation is more so. And I think if you look at kind of the best players ever, um, they have very different intuitions, and they're all excellent calculators, just really spectacular calculators. Um, and I was thinking about, and I also think that calculation is one of those things where most people tend to like, you start playing the game and you start competing and you start getting better, and your calculation improves. But at some point, your calculation stops improving. And your intuitions and your understandings may keep improving, right? So, like, I think I was my best as a player around 2010, and I didn't win anything. I won nothing that year. I kept losing to MC. Um, but I think overall, I was playing my best triple triad in 2010. And 2009 was my most successful year, but 2010, I think, was when it kind of all came most together for me. Um, or that's what I've tended to think historically. I wasn't as active a player. I played a ton in 2008 and 09, and I started playing less. 2011, I did get a tournament, but I was much less active by then. But I had a year and a half where TTA was all I wanted to do, and then I, dropped off of it. And in the drop off, my calculation was still really good, but my instincts got worse, and so I was still a strong contender for things, but I wasn't the same player I'd been. I should stop talking because we are going to have a move to make. 8571 is a card I kind of like seeing out of his hand. Now we might notice 6 is a dead square for me. That's true. But this is a card that could take in 4 and have a number facing out I couldn't deal with. So there's some upside to seeing this out of his hand. On the other hand, where the hell am I going to go? That 7834 is deadly in so many lines. Okay. He still has a capture in 4, but he is potentially low on ups. So 8561 in 2. My point is his 7834 might be a little overworked. And for instance, if he plays 7834 in 4, I could play, say, 7637 in 7, and that would make 4 and 7 safe. And it would make 2 safe because he has no threat in 5. And I don't think he has big combo setups, though I haven't checked sufficiently there. And if he went in 5, he would give up his threat in 4, and I would have freedom to go in 6 anyway. So he probably goes 6 there, right? If I play something like 8561 and 2, I think he goes 6. Let's say with 5826, that looks the most natural. And then maybe I can play 5583 and 5. I think I should be holding there. That pluses, so I don't flip anything extra, but I'm up 6-4. they go in 4, it's 5-5, but I can land 1-8, 4-8, and 8, and that's great for me. If they go in 7, they can't set anything up, so that's not a problem. And if they go in 8 with probably 6-5-8-3, because 7-8-3-4 is the better sweeper, I can go in 7. And if they go with 7-8-4-3, I think I can go in 7 anyway, right? Because actually 6-5-8-3 might be the better sweeper. But I think I can go in 7, because 6-5-8-3, 6 plus 6 is 12, 5 plus 8 is 13, and if I have a 7 facing up, 8 plus 7 is 15, so they only flip one thing. So I think I should go 2. I think I should go 2. He might have something in like 8. I'm just not going to have time to check that sufficiently. So we're going to go 2, and we're going to get back to what I was talking about. We're going to hope this holds, but it might not. I am under real pressure here. So I think most people at some point, the calculation stalls out. Like we stop improving at calculation. And the intuitions keep increasing. So the reason I think of 2010 as my better year than 2009 is because there were a whole bunch of patterns I figured out in 2010 that I did not have figured out in 2009. Stuff like meeting a side with an adjacent side was something I would not remotely consider, and suddenly it became an effective part of my toolbox. So my knowledge increased, my intuitions increased, my sort of toolbox of things I could do increased quite substantially in 2010. But I was thinking about this and thinking, what if, like, the tournament results are right, and I was just better in 2009, right? Why would I be better in 2009? What if, like, I had more knowledge, I had more understanding, I was a sort of a deeper, more profound, like, more thoughtful player, but I actually was weaker? Um, what would be the explanation there? And you see this in things like chess too. Like Caruana has talked about like he knows more. He's second best chess player in the world. Um, he's talked about how he knows more now than he did 10 years ago, but his results have stayed really steady. His rating is lower, but there's been rating deflation. Um, his results have been quite steady. He had a bad patch a couple years ago, but aside that, like his results have been really steady, and he has learned more as a player, and it's possible like his opponents have learned just as much, right? But he knows more, but he had strengths then that he doesn't have as much of now. And I think one of the things was when I was so excited to be playing like every hour of every day that I could, I loved calculating, right? I loved figuring out lines. And now I sort of try to skimp where I can. So is it any surprise that I can still like improve my intuitions and my understandings because I look at a position and I get excited to figure out like, hey, why does this move work that doesn't make sense to me? Or let's try to verbalize that. But calculation is something that's really tiresome, especially like when you're a very strong calculator, the calculations that are pushing your limits are longer and longer calculations and tougher to do. And they're just exhausting to check so much of. And so maybe it's not so much that, like, I was thinking there's kind of a fairly hard limit on calculation. You see players reach a certain level of calculation, and then, like, inevitably people stop improving in that department. They can improve in other departments. But maybe it's that, like, the way we're excited about Triple Triad, we are excited to calculate for a while, and at some point it just becomes really hard to improve at. It's not that we're actually, like, limited and that our brains, like, have a, speed limit and we've reached that speed limit. Though that's a, I think, possible interpretation. But I think another is just that it's really tiring to keep working at that. That's kind of the hardest thing to keep working at. And so we don't, and thus that becomes an area where we probably drop a little off our peak, but fundamentally like stay somewhere in that area. And that's going to basically determine what level we can reach. So I was thinking like my attempts to get better at Triple Triad have mostly been adding new concepts. And I think that's a really important way to get better, right? The way to get better on the kind of skills intuition side is to keep finding new ideas and figuring out how they work and then finding ways to incorporate them into your play. But the way to get better at calculation is to keep calculating at the edge of your limits, right? To keep pushing and to like not do something I do constantly where like I know something's supposed to be a win and I don't see the move in 20 seconds, so I go, solver, tell me. Now, obviously, other people don't have that problem because we have not proliferated the solver. I'm weirdly worried he's going to go an 8, just for the record. I feel like 8 could be like I should be like 7, 6, 3, 7, and 7 or whatever should be fine, but like I'm worried that something just sweeps there, that it sets up enough pluses that I have a big problem. I don't think I should be losing against anything else. Like this is the default move for him, and I think a good move, but also one I shouldn't be too worried about. So let's calculate it. 5, 5, 8, 3, and 5 is the main line I calculated. The current score is 5, 5, so that will take a 6-4 lead. If he puts 6, 5, 8, 3, and 4, I go 8, I win. If he goes 7, 8, 3, and 4, I go 8, I win again. If he goes 7, 8, 3, 4, and 7, I go 8 and I win. Remember, no plus wall. If he goes, right, no plus wall. Yeah, good. Okay. If he goes 6, 5, 8, 3 in 7, I also go 8 and I win. If he goes 7, 8, 3, 4 in 8, I can play 7, 6, 3, 7 in 7 and we tie. And if he goes 6, 5, 8, 3, and 8, I can play 7, 6, 3, 7 and 7 and we tie. Okay, so 5, 5, 8, 3, and 5 ties. We know we have a tie, and now we're looking for potential winning options. So let's try 1, 8, 4, 8, and 5. We go up 6, 4. Against any move in 4, we can play 5, 5, 8, 3, and 8, and we're still winning all those lines. Against moves in 8, I think they basically just work the same way as before. We play 7, 6, 3, 7 in 7, and we tie. The same numbers are facing out. And 7 looks pretty similar. Maybe they occasionally set up combos in 8, but we always block 8 anyway, so that's fine. Okay, so that's also a tie. Do we have play in 4? We might. We really might. Because if they play 6, 5, 8, 3, and 5, we have 1, 8, 4, 8, and 8. And we win. And if they play 7, 8, 3, 4, and 5, we can play 5, 5, 8, 3, and 8. I guess that's just ties. Okay, so that's not promising. They have at least a tie there, so I don't need to keep looking at that move because I know I've already found ties. 8 is another move I need to check. But 6, 5, 8, 3 is going to be too good a sweeper. So anything I put in 8, they can at least play 7, 8, 3, 4, and 5. They take a 6-4 lead. Or they make it 5, 5. I have no double captures, and 6, 5, 8, 3 will capture something. So 8 cannot win. 7 is very unlikely. But let's do the proper thing, and we'll check 7. We'll make sure we've checked everything. Say 7, 6, 3, 7, and 7. Or any move in 7. Say they go 7, 8, 3, 4, and 4. Can we be winning in that position? No, we cannot. Okay, so we cannot have a win anywhere. If we had a win here, I've really messed up. And I think 5, 5, 8, 3, and 5 is our most comfortable tie. That's the one I checked first. That's the one I was most thorough about. So I'm going to make the move I'm most confident, like, that I didn't miscalculate something. And there are ways we can, like, even without explicitly getting faster or deeper in calculation, we can also regiment ourselves. For instance, with 4 moves left, I think most players start looking, okay, this move appeals for this reason, this move appeals for that reason. And if instead we just rigorously went, anytime there's 4 moves left, I think that's enough time for me to check every single line. And in this case, though I could like double count sometimes, I could be like anything I put in 7, if they go 4, they have at least a tie, right? Whichever cards I have left, I can't find anything more than a tie there. So, but there's always going to be lines like that, right? You're never going to quite have to actually calculate everything. And if you're a high end player, right? I'm talking about very strong players here. 4 moves left, you can calculate everything. You have enough time. This was an example of me doing it, and I had some time to spare, and I was talking while doing it, which obviously massively decreases calculation speed, right? So it is very possible to calculate every position with 4 moves left. Oh, I should start putting this in the database. And that's what we should do, right? Every top player should never make mistakes with 4 moves left. And yet we all do make mistakes with 4 moves left. And that's okay, right? Casual games, it's fine to not have everything. All right, 86543, 37661, 85719, 85612, 58266, 55385. He's going to go 8, 7, 8, 3, 4, 8. And we're going to play 7637. I guess 1848 works as well. Is 1848 funnier? 9, 13, 12? Doesn't lose. All right, let's do it with 1848. 18487, 65834, 7637 remaining. And good game. So like one thing is like just force yourself to do calculation in those spots, right? That's both gonna like make you practice relying on calculation more for those spots, which we should. But second of all right, I have to post as well. 3, 1, 9, 2, 6, 5, 8, 7, 4. GG. So there's both the and we can regiment our calculation. We can make ourselves immediately go into calculation mode rather than be in kind of figuring out mode as we are most of the time, right? We're not in pure calculation mode, but we should have a point where we know we switch, right? And that could be 4 moves left, that could be 3 moves left, that could be 2 moves left. But if 2 moves left is easy for you to calculate and 3 moves is harder, 3 moves is the point you should be doing that. If 3 moves is very doable, but 4 moves is harder, 4 moves is the time you should try to be doing that. And I will say, every single player is on the record in kind of weekly opens or in majors having made mistakes with 4 moves to go. Everyone. Me, Akiyama, Deli, even Seto. He was the last one to do it. All right, so he said game up, but I don't see it. Someone else click it? Ah, there it is. Okay. Say best of luck again. We have first turn, so I shouldn't get distracted. We should start thinking. His directional strengths: 8 up, 8 to the right, 8 down, 8 right. He has a left weakness again. Everyone gets left weaknesses against me because I have the leftmost politics. Okay. But he does have 8s in the other directions. So an 8-7 corner is not going to be sufficient to be fully safe, but 2-6-8-6 might be, and 4-2-8-8 might be. I do notice I have a little bit of an up problem, but my numbers going down are very good. And sometimes that can compensate, right? Because like say I go 3 and he goes 1. If I go 2 with a 7 down, I am getting good value out of the game being upward directed because like that's just a hard thing for him to take, right? Okay, let's check our setup. We're not going to be like him. We're not going to be fancy and clever. We're going to say, is 4-2-8-8 and 3 safe? 8-7-3-3 cannot be set up in 2 to take it. 6-8-4-3 would need a 4 up. He doesn't have it. 1-6-8-6 would need a 6 up. He does have it, but 6-8-4-3 and 5 does not set up 6. Okay, we're good. 1-8-7-5 needs a 7 up. He does not have it. 5 8 6 3 6 needs a 3 up. He does not have it. Okay, so he cannot double set up against that card. On the other hand, if we do play 4 2 8 8 and 3, we give up captures against 8 7 3 3 and 7. So I think if we can get away with it, I would rather play 2 6 8 6 and 1. Let's check if he has setups in 2. He has all the setups. Yeah. For instance, 6 8 4 3 and 5 sets 1 6 8 6 up beautifully in 4 and 8 7 3 3 beautifully in 2. And I didn't check further than that. He might have other setups as well. Okay. So 4 2 8 8 and 3 concedes 8 7 3 3 in 7. But that gets an 8 out of his hand. Does that give us safety in 1 with one of our 8 7s? No, it doesn't, because we'll have set up his 1 6 8 6 and 2. Harumph. Do we have a setup in 5 there? If 8 4 3 7 was 8 4 2 7, then 2 6 8 6 and 5 would be a huge setup. But it is sadly not a setup at all. Okay. Alright. I don't know if I want to concede that. That seems fairly costly to me. I don't love that position. A Tezuka-like move would be to go 2 8 7 6 and 4 and 1, but I don't like that here. We could play like he did last game. No, I don't want that. Let's play the 8 8 corner and work it out from there. I didn't see other appealing moves. And oh, one other thing I think is just useful practicality. If I do not have any particularly good ideas except for one with somewhere between 60 and 120 seconds left, I just make the move. Like, I would rather make the move I am most comfortable with like time to spare and having been comfortable, than make the move I'm going to make after being panicked for the last 60 seconds, right? So I try to just make the move on to the next one. I know I checked this. I don't want to like have it have fallen out of my memory or suddenly see something against it that gets me worried, because I should trust my previous calculations. I believe in this move. And we will make this move, and we will try to deal with 8733 when it comes. Which I would guess will be shortly. It does really give up a lot of up power of his, right? This can be a type of move you just can't make. There are positions where you cannot make this move. One thing I can't do, sadly, is as long as 1686 and 5836 are in his hand, I can't play either of the 2876, or the 87s cannot go in 1 because they have a 1686, and the 2686 cannot go in 1 because they have the 5836. So it would be nice if we could go 1, but that seems like something we won't have for a while. My guess is we're going to go 6. 6 is the move that tries to take advantage of his left weakness the most. Why is that? Because 2 leaves a kind of half-open safety in 1, and he can take advantage of that. On the other hand, 6, the half-open safety we leave is in 9, and it is much harder for him to take advantage of that. Okay, he plays a bit like we did last game. He goes for the adjacent corner. This does set up a threat in 6, so we're going to block 6. We're going to block 6. My remaining cards look really nice for the incoming game. Huh. Okay, so let's say I played 8 4 3 7 and 6. They can go 5 with 6 8 4 3, but I imagine 2 6 8 6 and 2 is very good for me. They have 8743. 8733 for 8. Okay, so they do have the setup. They do have the setup. And I kind of have to block 2 because they set up this big threat in 2. So they're going to combo back and be up 6-4. Now, I don't think I'm ever in trouble there because I can. So the line goes I go 6, he goes 5, I combo in 2, he combos in 8, and I have 2876 and 5873 left, and I can play either one of them in 1, and they will be safe to his remaining hand. He has a 5 up maximum, and it's playing off a 3 facing left from 5, and 5 plus 7 is 12, and 3 plus 8 is 11. And then I'm guaranteed to capture at the end because there's so many 3s sticking out. So we definitely survive there. Definitely survive there. But no more. Can he go 8 as well? He probably can go 8. If he goes 8, though, I think 5's pretty appealing for me. Like, if I drop 2, 8, 7, 6, and 5, it's just hard for me to be in a bad spot. So I think 5 is his point. 5 is a good point. But I also don't think I can leave 6 open. Right? You can play a move in kind of 1 to set yourself up for 2, but as soon as he blocks there, I need to block 6, and I might not want to, and I don't have a good card for 1. I think we're going to have to go 6, and I think it kind of has to be 8437. I think that's a card I'm not going to want in the remaining game. I don't think I will need the up power. Yeah, like, even if in that key line I saw, like, somehow pretend it was still in our hand, and we could go 6, he goes 5, we combo in 2, he combos in 8, we play in 1 and have 8, 4, 3, 7 remaining. The 4 is good enough because there's only 3s facing to the left in 5 and 8. And the 8 is a better sweeper, but even then it doesn't take anything extra that we need. Okay. So I'm going to play in 6. I didn't really look at anything else, but I think 6 is just the logical thing to do. And I think he found a nice plan. I'm going to start putting the game in. Wazzup. I had first turn. Tezuka. 42883, 18759. Really nice move. 84376. And I don't think I have anything here. He doesn't have to play 6, 8, 4, 3, and 5, probably. Like, he probably has other moves here, given that, like, anything he puts in 8, he has a threat in 5. But 5 looks very pleasant for him. Possible I have some huge setup, right? Seems unlikely. Like, my setup would be, one of the 8-7s in 1, right? He goes 5, I'd play one of the 8-7s in 1, and 2, 6, 8, 6 is both 2 and 4, which seems incredible, right? Except he goes 2, I go 4, and then he plays the combo in 8, and I'm like, oh, yeah. It turns out he had 3 squares, and I had 2, and I couldn't use the 2 because he always had the 3rd in response. If he goes 5 and I go 8, he goes 2. There might be some lines worth checking there, but it's kind of unlikely. Because he has, again, the combo in 2 as well. So I think 5 is just very solid for him, and I don't have anything there. 8, I'm not as worried about, but I'm sure he has reasonable moves in 8 as well. This was a really good adjacent corner. I think he took a potentially scary position and neutralized it easily. I'm going to check my Discord messages because I am currently figuring out what the dinner is going to be tonight. To get back on that, we'll do that later. Was I talking about something important? Probably not. All right, he does go 5. Yeah. Yeah. Can we have fun in 1? I just don't think so. 8733 hits an 8 so hard. It's just, yeah. If we could meet 2 with 7, right? If we had some big setup for 7, and we almost do, right? 2, 6, 8, 6, and 7 sets up 5, 7, 8, 7, 3 to have 8, but suddenly we lose 4, and we need 4. If it was 4, 8, 7, 3, it would have 4, but it wouldn't have 8. All right, yeah. So I think there's nothing here. We'll check a few more things. We could go 8. If we go 8, it's 5, 5. If they go 7, we go 2, and we win. But they don't go 7. They go 2. And if they go 2, we don't win. Or do we? No, we don't. Hmm. All right, so 2, 6, 8, 6, 8, 1, 6, 8, 6, 2. We trail 6, 4. Or 2, 8, 7, 6, 8. They go 2, and we play. Yeah, this is nothing. What am I doing? What am I trying for here? All right, so I think we have to go 2. 1 is nothing. Um, 4. Can we have fun in 4? I don't think so. And that's the kind of move I get in trouble with when I get excited about. So we're not going to do that because it's bad move. I think we should play 2, 6, 8, 6, and 2. And they will play 8, 7, 3, 3, and 8, and we should make sure we have a tie there. But we can play either of our 8, 7s in 1, and we hold. Yeah. I think there's nothing to do in 1. I think there's nothing to do in 8. I think there's nothing to do in 4. And I think there's nothing to do in 7. That's all the squares. So we're going to play the move I am. Actually, do we need to combo there? No, but there's really no need to keep 2, 6, 8, 6 in our hand. And it's a bit more forcing, so yeah, we'll do that. So they played 6, 8, 4, 3, 5. Tezuka has a very nice feel for 5. 2, 6, 8, 6, 2. Alright, what were we talking about? Yeah, so I tend to think players keep improving. They kind of reach their calculation cap, and then they keep improving at kind of the knowledge, skills, intuition aspect. But probably the bigger thing holding back most players is the calculation. Now, the two go hand in hand, right? Because you can't calculate everything, so you have to prune the variations, right? You have to say, okay, which cards make sense in which squares, and then are able to calculate those, right? If you have to calculate every possible move as equal, that's going to be a much less efficient calculator than the person who says, these 4 moves are critical, these replies to those moves are critical, and go from there. So obviously they have to go hand in hand. But you never really see someone who's like a great calculator who has no feel for where cards should go, right? The more you calculate, the more you see where cards belong. And like, yeah, it's a little bit of a shame to say, but I think it is the better skill. It is the better skill. So so I think maybe I have thought the way for players to improve is to kind of, you especially want to do it with the game someone actually played, because someone will always be most invested and have done the most thought about their own games. So you take games they've played and you look for where mistakes were made, and you figure out where there are kind of patterns to those mistakes, and you start to talk through and figure out move types that aren't intuitive to them but that would have helped in those positions. For me, I commentate a lot more than I play, so it's when I see something unusual to me that I think is strong, I spend some time, or I try to spend some time trying to verbalize it to myself. And maybe I succeed and maybe I don't, but I put in some effort there because if I don't verbalize it to myself, it's not going to stick and I'm never going to be able to notice or look for similar concepts in my own games. So, so I think there's a clear path there, but if calculation is the more important limiter on most of us, I've sort of treated it as this is set in stone. And I'm not sure like my puzzles are particularly useful for it. Um, because I do think one's own games are going to be the times one improves and executes most usefully. I think it's really important in things to have to commit to a decision. I think decision making is a really important part, and it kind of, if you're doing a puzzle and you kind of, which is not to say like people shouldn't throw out multiple answers, they definitely should, but that it works differently if you know you can throw out an answer and then go back to the drawing board rather than in a game where once you've thrown out your answer, that's your move, right? You don't have, so I think a format where your decisions are final is really important to how you actually are going to think and calculate in a game. And thus, I think the most useful time to work on anything is in your own game. Sorry, he does go 8, 7, 3, 3, and 8. Nice move. Luckily, we don't walk into pluses. He has a 5 gap and a 3 gap to his upright, and we are going to be putting out a 4 gap. So he only has the one tie, I suppose, with 1, 6, 8, 6, 4 after we go 1. But there's no way to do more than that. So we'll go 1. And tie number 2. Good game so far, I think. I would be quite surprised if any serious mistakes had been made. Yeah, so I was thinking maybe I was better in 2009 because in 2009 I was really excited to be calculating and having so much fun analyzing every position. And in 2010 started sort of assuming, okay, this is, that's how much I calculate, and, not doing it when you don't have to is very different than the person really excited to calculate 24/7. And I think there's a very good chance that I am sort of wrong in my historical memory here. And in fact, the year I won everything, I was better than the year I didn't win anything. That seems that seems plausible. It seems plausible also that I'm right. I did gain substantial knowledge and a drop off in calculation. Maybe that knowledge doesn't offset it, or it does offset it, but maybe it just doesn't. Maybe it just doesn't. And maybe that time of being so excited to calculate everything. What was the move order on this one? 3, 9. Great move in 9. 6, 5, 2, 8, 1, 4, 7. Another nice game, I think. How long have we been going? 48 minutes. All right. Oh, this will be a long video. Maybe we'll move on to another video. I don't know. I guess what I wanted to say this video while playing some games is I think being really excited to and having a lot of fun calculating is probably the best way to improve a triple triad. I think the second best way is to analyze one's own games. Anytime you play an open game, you can send it to me and I'll put it in the solver, and I won't put any thought into it because I'm lazy, and I will send you when the mistakes were and some improvements or whatever, stuff that's pretty easy to pop out. That doesn't take too long. But figuring out like, hey, here are patterns of how I lose or when I get in trouble, or just here's a position I couldn't find something to do. I couldn't find an idea. Where was an idea? Like, right? Actually, a good example of this is, and he didn't ask me to send him anything, but I think round 1 or round Yeah, round one, Seto, or round two, one of the rounds. Seto beat Turks. Round one. Seto beat Dalamar in round two of this tournament. Seto beat Turds, and he, um, so he wins that, and Turds basically couldn't find a move one he liked, right? He couldn't find a starter he liked. And he mentioned that, so I looked at it a bit, and I looked at kind of what my strongest bot thought and tried to sort of figure out its thinking. And basically, there was almost nothing that was kind of a normal starter that looked good, but there were some aggressive side options that seemed somewhat comfortable, right? Stuff where it said, okay, hey, I have very little in this position, my cards don't click at all, but I do have more up power than you have down power. And so I can chuck a card in two and control 1 and 3 via 4 and 6. And there's no combo potential because none of my cards have remotely usable numbers coming out of them. So there's no combo potential for either. And that's enough to not have near as much trouble. Um, and so that might be a spot where you're just like, okay, all these starters are terrible. This is going to be a really hard game to play. But it could also be a spot where you sort of you add that in. When I'm really not finding anything, look for aggressive sides. Maybe that's something you can start to look for. I don't know. But I think that's kind of the other thing is, you do want to increase your knowledge and like broader skill, but if you can increase calculation, that really is a lot of the difference between the very good and the best players. And yeah, uh, worth worth working on if there's a way to do so. All right, we're going to be taking a break, and that's perfect. We'll just move this into another video. Hopefully I said something of interest to someone at some point here. Oh, this is off-centered. What am I doing? Sorry about that. Hopefully, oh god, if you couldn't see the cards, I'm so sorry. It's going to be one of my many worst videos ever. All right, well, we'll end it there.